Oh, that's you doing a screen share. Yeah, there. Have at it. Hey, everybody. Well, this is another episode of Indie Comics Underground. It's weird because I spell it like one way on one thing, and then I've got it spelled another way up there. But yeah, you are looking at Al Nickerson's computer. He's looking for some stuff for Sword of Eden. I had a lot going on this weekend. I went ahead, showed my pull box online, got a few comics. I got Nexus Scourge #2. That's some pretty spiffy looking artwork there. It says it is by Mike Barron and Kelsey Shannon. I'll talk about that here in just a second. Let me just do a quick run through. I got Absolute Batman #4. I've read all of these already, by the way. I got from Distillery, it is Scott Snyder, and is it Jock or Jacques? Do you know?
I think it's Jock.
Okay, well, anyway, Jock and Scott Snyder, and it is You Won't Feel a Thing #1. There's going to be more of them based on it's a cliffhanger ending that sets it up for a story. Don't know how many. I would love to know how many. That's always like a concern to me. Is it like going to go on forever, or is it like 10 of them, or what? And then, last but certainly not least, the Sword of Eden, the second one. Got it right there. Read it. Lots of stuff to talk about. Al, you've not only read this book, you've written it.
Yes, I believe so. It's
and drawn it.
Correct. Yeah.
And I told my wife that, and she's like, "Wow, he wrote it and drew it." Every time that I talk about doing a comic book, somebody's like, "And you drew it too?" It's not that I can't draw. It's just you know firsthand how much time that takes up, and it's like no, it's like all that. I have a trimmer in my hand. I don't know if it's from my scoliosis or if it's from my heart, but it's one of those. But I've got like the it would look like Dr. Katz or whatever. I compensate by like feathering with a pencil. I'd probably be fine as a penciler, but with inking, you want somebody to have like a surgeon, kind of hand and all that doing it, because you don't want the little strokes.
Well, yeah, you definitely need a steady hand when you're drawing comics, especially if you're inking with a brush. You need to have a very steady hand. So,
absolutely. Yeah. So, Nexus #2, I'll tell you, and I don't guess Mike Barron's going to be on here today, but I'll just go ahead and say about it. So, it is the second and last part of this 2-part series there, Nexus #2. Don't want to give a lot away. I was kind of wondering how it was going to go. I kind of got some Star Trek vibes. There's have you ever watched like Star Trek Next Generation, where they go to Data's planet where he was born and they meet Lore, and there's this thing that like eats life on worlds? Have you ever seen that?
Yeah, so Mike Barron and Steve Rude are both big Star Trek fans.
Yeah, I kind of thought that it might kind of be along those lines. When you get into this one and you get to the end, not going to say a whole lot, but I totally got Galactus, Silver Surfer kind of vibes. When you read it, you'll know what I mean, but it's got some stuff that made me feel that way about it. I have some kind of belief that Mike Barron really likes to play golf, because there's always some kind of golfing thing going on in his stuff. So that's what happened there. The other quick one that I can mention is the Absolute Batman. Because it's such a continuation of the story. He's getting bad guys. The what's his name? The Black Skull guy is wreaking havoc. This, of course, is part of the Absolute universe. So Darkseid in the whatever the comic's called, I own it. I've read it. I've reviewed it. Darkseid merges with Spectre, and he creates this universe where the good guys are always the underdogs and they don't have any of the advantages. So that's why. So there's an explanation. So Bruce Wayne doesn't have money or anything like that, but he's still become Batman. So he's just really pumped up, and he hits things from a different end. Alfred Pennyworth is like a James Bond-esque character, and they meet up, and they're both after the same bad people. But it's a soap opera is basically what I'm getting at with this. Because I thought, how many issues is this going to go through? Just because I don't know if you have this problem, Al, or not, but like when you get issue, and I think that's a lot of reasons why, like Gail Simone or whoever, while they'll have like mini sagas, something will go for 5 issues or 3 issues or whatever, and then it's another little mini story in the episodic tale of whoever or whatever. Because you think, you want something to happen, and how long is it going to be? So I don't know how long the whole Black Mask thing will be going on. I just know that it said it'll at least be 24 and more if there's demand for it. So not really sure about that. But I mean, there's not any like huge events that's going on. You just kind of know who players are. A semi truck gets flipped over. Bunch of things like that. You won't feel a thing as a setup. So this isn't a superhero book, and I like crime type stuff, serial murder, whatever type things. That's totally this. You got this aged detective. He's in a nursing home. There's a man that murdered the woman he was going to marry. By the way, blood, gore, naked woman's body. It's drawn well and all that. Some language throughout. So it says mature on it. So that's what all's in it. So it does have more of like the R or at least PG-13 rating. It would probably be more PG-13 or a light R if it's an R. But the guy's in the nursing home. He used to be a cop. He had hunted down all these serial killers. There was this dude called the Chatter Man that he could never get. This psychopath gets people's teeth that he kills, and he strings them together so they rattle around on his face when he kills them. He kills them with a large knife and an axe and hacks them all to pieces because it's all kinds of overkill gore stuff just to make him more gruesome and horrific. And somebody else, like the chief of police or the mayor, whoever she is, there's a woman. It shows her. She's sitting in her chair and she's just been hacked all to pieces. And the guy knows that it's a psychopath and he's out there, but the man's got dementia. He's got a couple months to live and he's in a nursing home, and he still wants to be in the part where he can get checked out instead of the part where he can never get out. There's 3 different wings. It talks about it. One's leave when you want. The other's only when you're checked out. The other's that it ain't going to happen. He right now he's in the when a lady takes him to do that. So yeah, he's there's kind of been like some denial stuff, but he remembers running into this one dude face to face, but they've never really been able to pin it on anyone, and so he knows that it has to be somebody that's in the same town. He's probably met them, all that, and it's a I'm gonna get you is the way that this ends, but it goes ahead and it gives you enough story and enough background. Not sure how many of these they're doing. This is all of Distillery stuff. Let me hold up the other thing. I believe it's the size that French magazines or comics are. It's like bigger. It's like bigger and wider and all that. So I mean, their stuff is really good quality. It's just a matter of if you can find stories that you like from them. I know that they have Another Brother's Mother or Blood Brother's Mother. And that's like a really violent Western thing. I've not read those, but it is a novel that they've adapted. So I mean, maybe they have something for you. You just look at what the titles are, but they're nice quality stuff. I think a lot of things that they have are kind of like devilly or whatever, just from what I've seen, and I'm just like, Psh. But yeah, serial murder thing. That's fine. It's like I thought I'll check it out. Scott Snyder, I think that he does a thing a lot where he like builds and builds and builds and builds and builds to stuff, and that happens in this. And I say that because that also happens in that Batman thing. In the Batman thing, it's what's different about a bat, and it's finally says that they do the impossible. They're the only mammal that flies, whatever. but it keeps like rehashing the same line to kind of try and build something. And you won't feel a thing. It's what's behind the door, which almost sounds like what's in the box. If you've watched Seven, you know. But what was behind the door was the woman that he loved, murdered like a bloody heap on the day that he was going to propose. So yeah, he does that to like build tension and everything. And then finally the payoff at the end was the I know this guy's still out there, and even in my feeble, early onset dementia state, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to try and solve the case that I never solved. Okay. Were you ready to show some of your pictures so we can get into your book?
Absolutely. So yeah, I've never done this shared screen before, so let's see how that works out.
Do you like the police, like cop serial murderer type stories, or do you like any of those at all, or is there a limit or what?
I am not into that kind of material. Um, you've mentioned Seven a couple of times when we've chatted.
Yeah.
I remember seeing that movie way back when I was younger and probably a little bit more rebellious. So yeah, it sounds a little bit too much for me.
Yeah, and I mean this doesn't have like the underlying like Christian religious themes in it, because like that killer, of course he went seven deadly sins and all that. So I mean that makes a neatness to it for me. I like Red Dragon and whatnot. But yeah, this doesn't have that. I don't know why he targets the victims he targets, but it's just more being gruesome. It doesn't show the murders; it just shows the bodies after he's did it, and just talks about what a monster the guy's.
Uh, yeah, it sounds like a monster.
Yeah.
All
So
right, so,
hopefully he gets got.
yeah, I'll show you a few pages from the Sword of Eden Shinobi graphic novel. So that's the cover of the standard cover. So the standard cover is $14.99, and I have a Trump cover, which is a variant cover. So the variant cover is $29.99. But I'm only printing 100 copies of these, so they're signed and numbered. But the interiors are all exactly the same, and I just want to see what I have here. All right, so yeah, so this is the inside front cover. So I don't know if that looks familiar.
Yes, totally. Yes. I mean, I've been beginning to end of this book, and I've also got my wife reading your first book now, and she said, "I really like this. This is really good."
Oh,
So
that's yeah. Well, thank you so much. So yeah, I mean, the second volume, it's a lot different. I really didn't want to tell the same story over and over again.
yeah,
So this inside front cover. So the thing for both volumes is that I had the printer print the inside front cover and the inside back cover in color. So they were able to do that. This was also a limited edition print that I signed a number. I only have like 3 of these left, I think, 2 or 3. So I did give a little nod to Will Eisner here. So there's a street sign that says Dropsy Avenue.
that's awesome.
Background. So that's a little nod to Will Eisner and his graphic novel series. No one's pointed it out yet. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
And I know that you had mentioned that the gravestones that you have, the things that are written in Japanese, you have specific stuff that if you can read Japanese that you know.
Yes. So the main fight in the Sword of Eden Shinobi takes place in a Japanese cemetery. And yeah, so I had to draw all these tombstones in the background for those pages. Initially, I was just going to draw like little scribbles. I don't think I have anything to show here, but then I decided to put real names there in Japanese. So I did that, and they're names like of either people I know or various different comic book characters that have
Here, there's There's some pages with some stuff, but they're in a graveyard, yeah. And
Yeah,
you have different things that are written on them.
correct. So they're all names of very, fictitious comic book characters that have died, like Gwen Stacy or Jean Grey or Jason Todd, and then friends that I know who actually remain alive. But the thing is that there's a lady at my church, and she's from Japan, and she was giving me some really good advice. But the sort of calligraphy style that I chose for the names on the tombstone isn't exactly the sort of same sort of calligraphy that they would use in real life. Okay. So that I wasn't really aware of, but it's still readable if you could read it in Japanese, and hopefully you can. So here's a page about a character by the name of Ninja Spider. He was a ninja, and then he gained powers from a very old spider, Kumamusha. So
now I'm wondering, and I didn't really have like a grasp on it. How many ninjas, like ninjas period, because we have variable like ninja clans. How many ninjas are there in the, are we talking hundreds?
Dozens, maybe.
Okay, all right. I mean, I knew it was quite a few. I didn't know like what the amassment of ninjas was. I didn't know if it was like the Foot Clan where they just keep coming or what.
Yeah, pretty much, very similar to that. The thing is, I got really tired of drawing the same sort of ninja over and over again, so I started changing them a little bit uh, over the course of the battle. Here's a fight scene. So this is Rebecca Stern, Crusader Girl, and then there's a ninja kicks her in the back of the head. And in Japanese, well, this is what he is saying, what it sounds like, but it's Japanese, and it means pay attention. So she's fighting this ninja. She notices that Ninja Spider is jumping off and running away, I guess. And then the ninja that she is fighting attacks her from behind, smacks her in the back of the head, and tells her to pay attention. Here's some more Ninja Spider stuff. Oh, yeah, there's some grave markers there, but they're kind of small. Some more fighting between a ninja and Crusader Girl.
See that kind of cockiness where you hit somebody and you say pay attention. If it was a punch, it's almost like the type of the thing out of, is it Sonny Chiba, I think is his name, the Street Fighter? Don't know if you've ever watched that movie.
No, I haven't.
He's the dude that plays in, is it Lone Wolf and Cub in the movie? Of course they had like a big like manga about that was super famous. I guess it was like a written book or whatever. But yeah, he did all of these Japanese movies and they were always excessively violent. So he would like knock somebody to the ground and he would like put his like heel on their neck and it wouldn't necessarily show it, but he's kind of like jerking around like he's doing the twist, like he's snapping their neck. And I can only imagine that for the sound effect that somebody had a bag of Sun Chips, because it's that kind of thing that where he's great, and it's just like so overdone that I don't know that comedy's even the word, but it's in some weird realm. They've got one where he punches somebody in the head and then it shows like an X-ray like of the skull and it shows like a crack kind of form, like he cracked their skull. It's like Mortal Kombat before Mortal Kombat. It's like that ridiculous of excessive violence and something to the point that it has its own weird charm about it. I don't know. It's odd.
Yeah, well, you said Lone Wolf and Cub. I remember the manga, the comic from the 80s, yeah.
He's in those movies.
Oh, all right.
So in the in Quentin Tarantino's Kill Bill movies, for anybody that's watching this that knows those, he's the dude that made the sword. That they got this like that perfect sword. He was the sword maker. So Quentin Tarantino, being a hardcore Japanese movie guy, he cast him in that because of who he is.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so that's he got like an honorary role in it because he's a big deal.
Wow, interesting. You never would have known it by watching the movie.
Yeah, I yesterday I turned on some movie and I say it's a horror movie even though it's not a horror movie, it's a stupid movie. It's a Kevin Smith movie called Yoga Hosers, and Johnny Depp was in that, and I didn't even recognize that it was Johnny Depp. I think that that's good acting when you don't even know, but you know what the person looks like. He's all fixed up. I also wasn't processing it that was his daughter that plays the other main role in there. The first that I'd ever heard mention of her name is that she's in the new Nosferatu movie. And I thought, oh, that is the same woman. When I heard that, but it's weird. It's really odd, but I thought it was neat that he played a role, and it just went like right under my radar that was him playing the role of like this Frenchman bounty hunter, weird kind of character, because he looked and acted no way that was like putting off this is Johnny Depp. And that's just cool. That's just good acting.
Well, yeah, I think Johnny Depp is actually a very good actor. Also, with the Sword of Eden Shinobi, there's the first appearance of a character by the name of
Dareduck.
Dareduck. So
yes.
That's age. So he's at the end of the graphic novel. So this is the first page we see him. And he's a fun character. So I was very happy to introduce him to in the graphic novel. And towards the end of the graphic novel, I have a section where I just had some pinup pages and like a gallery section of artwork that I've done. Some older stuff. Oh yeah, this is like pretty old too.
So what exactly is the Spider Ninja Clan's like end game? Are they about like world domination, wiping out the good? What's their deal? Because they brought this dude back. What is their deal? That I know that they're like an imposing, like threatening group that'll fight, but what's their end game? What are they all about?
Right. So the Scarred Fist Ninja Clan, I do mention them a couple of times in the first volume. So their end deal is they're a very corrupting business organization. So they're thieves. They assassinate people. They do a lot of evil stuff around the world. And and they've been they're because of the sort of aspect to ninjutsu, they dabble into like very dark like magic and that sort of thing. So Ninja Spider convinces the group of heroes to go to Japan and want to get rid of the Scarred Fist Ninja Clan once and for all. So yeah, they're an organization of killers, and they're involved in all types of different illegal activity around the world, especially in Asia. And they're terrible. And their leader is a fallen samurai, and they're Jonin. And he's been living off of various different sort of mystical things like potions and stuff for centuries now. And, but he is not doing well. So he wants to live forever. And he's doing whatever he can to live forever. Including, he's taking various different potions and that sort of thing, or he reaches out to this demon, the white snake demon, which is actually the white snake god in Japanese mythology. So this Jonin is doing whatever he can to survive, and he's looking for eternal life, but he's looking outside of the one who can only give eternal life, and that's the Savior. So yeah. And yeah, the Jonin is a bad dude, and we learned about him and his history in the graphic novel, and we learned that he's a failed samurai, and he's outcast, and he joins the ninja, and eventually becomes the leader of the Scarred Fist Ninja Clan.
Where you have one of the ninjas talking about how ninjas aren't like the samurai, how they don't hold their weapons as sacred, and
Right.
you know they don't care a bit to like relinquish their weapon to just throw it at you or whatever.
Right. Yeah. Well, the samurai and the ninja, I mean, they're, you know, uh, very different types of people.
Oh yeah,
And
historically they were hugely different. The samurai would guard the emperor, so they were that, and the ninja they were like assassins against that. It was like farmers or whatever. That's why they were in disguise and like the nunchucks and stuff. They were like farming tools essentially, and so it was like low key, like impoverished um, martial arts made to kill.
right. Yeah. So the samurai had a very strong code of ethics that they believed in. And the ninjas sort of had their own sort of view on things, but it was very much contrary to what the samurai believed in and did. So this last page I want to show you, it's showing what's going on in regards to the finding of Noah's Ark, uh,
Yes.
Turkey. And it's weird because I had to draw this scene. I had to draw the scene. So it's like 3 pages, I think. And the scene shows the excavation crew.
Mhm.
And I had to draw 2 scientists who are excavating Noah's Ark. So
Mhm.
2 people I know, and I put them in the book. So the guy here with the beard is a very good friend of mine, Charles. Um, yeah. So that's the cool thing about, you know, writing and drawing in comics and graphic novels, is that if you have to name something or draw somebody, use the things that you know and like. So yeah, those are some pages from the Sword of Eden Shinobi graphic novel. So
Very
if you want to unshare, you can do that.
I have no clue how to do that. I think that maybe can I click like you're gonna have to click some kind of button to do that. I think.
It's yeah, it says I can share, but it's
Oh,
not.
oh, oh, I know what to do. Excuse me. I
Okay.
just click that.
All right, there you go.
Boom. Yeah. So like when you come into this stuff and everything, it has a little button where I press it and it like just kind of moves the thing like it's turning it on and off. So that thing does the same thing as if another individual person was in here. And you know, because it's the shared screen thing, and I just click it on or off like that. No, man, that's really cool. I like that, and have enjoyed your book. And again, got my wife reading on it. Now, my wife doesn't like boogery, scary, whatever types. My wife is very sunny. She's very sunshiny, and I'm
Mhm.
like, you'll like this book. And the good thing about it, this is like a book that all ages, you know, kid could read it, whatever. It's not going to be dropping any profanity. It's not got blood and guts and stuff. Yes, some people are going to get hurt or whatever, but it's in like the most tame of ways that like nobody's disemboweled in
Right.
these books. Yes.
Yeah, see, the thing is, especially when I was writing the first graphic novel, The Sword of Eden, there are a couple things that I wanted to tell within the story. So I had to kind of figure out a way of telling those stories or those plot points without being too terribly graphic. Because that's not the kind of stuff I like. I'm not into very graphic material, whether it's comics or graphic novels or even film or television. I'm not into that. I don't like the gory stuff. There's no cussing in the graphic novels at all that I do. Um, if I had to do something sort of like that, I will make up a word.
Yeah.
Um, there was a character, Asmodeus, from the first graphic novel, and he says "stinky socks." So stuff like that, I'll put
Yeah.
in, make something that's, you know, kind of safe. But yeah, yeah. So both of the graphic novels are recommended for preteens and older. So, but I've had like moms and grandmas coming to me and saying that, you know, my 8-year-old daughter or my 8-year-old grandchild read your graphic novel and loves it.
That's
So,
awesome.
no, you know, but I don't like graphic material. I don't like vulgar stuff. So that's not the kind of work that I want
So
to do.
let me throw this out there to you and ask you about this because I don't know if you've ever read it because I have some interest now. this has some violence and gore in it, but it's in a way that's meant to be completely stupid. Have you ever read the Archie versus Predator?
I have not read it. I am aware of it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I thought it looked like it might be charming, but of course at the same time, it's meant to be idiotic. Because it's Archie versus Predator, even though they're doing all that judgment stuff, which totally kind of, because they've bent and twisted Archie in ways that aren't like congruent with how Archie ever seemed like it was supposed to be. Like they've made it serious Archie, they've made it woke Archie, they've made it like hardcore, ultra violent, Archie. I mean, that just seems weird because you know how Archie's always been, and I think the same as you do about it. It was at the grocery store. It was up at the front. It's cute, funny, innocent stuff. Anybody could read it, and it would be okay.
Yeah. So about the time that I was leaving Archie, because I worked for Archie Comics for 8 years, around the time I was leaving, that's when they were working on the Archie versus Predator. I think it was a miniseries, a couple of issues.
I think it was a few, yeah.
Yeah, and one of my pencilers, Fernando Ruiz actually penciled that story, the Archie versus Predator. And then what happened is they got rid of everybody, pretty much at Archie Comics, and then they wanted to do the more serious sort of content in their books. Yeah, so a lot of people were very upset when they lost their jobs.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's a shame. Have you ever read the Archie meets Punisher?
I was thinking about that when you mentioned the Predator stuff. I'm aware of that as well. That was in the 1990s when that came out.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
And again, that there's a cuteness to that because you've got this innocent world thing, or that's what Archie always was. And then you've got this ultra violent character. So it's obviously supposed to be stupid because they're introducing something that's like doesn't fit in there. So they're being quirky and cute with it, presumably.
Yeah, in the early and mid 1990s, there was a lot of different kind of crossovers going on. They actually they sold very well in comics, so you had a lot of characters crossing over all the time.
Yeah, I know. I know the other crossovers. They've had Red Sonja and Vampirella have.
Oh,
I don't know if anybody else has, but I know that they do, and then they're like cheerleaders or whatever.
right. There was some fun books that came out, but it got a little crazy. There was a couple of like Batman versus Predator. There was like Green Lantern versus Aliens, and Marvel and DC were doing some crossovers too. Some of the stuff,
I loved Batman versus Spawn.
right. So there were two of those back in the 1990s, and then they did another crossover with those characters a couple of years ago again.
What did you think of it? Did you like it? Did you read any of them?
I read them all. I got them all. The last one, the Spawn Batman crossover, I didn't really like it. It didn't really make a whole lot of sense. I couldn't figure out if the new crossover had anything to do with the previous crossovers between Spawn and Batman. It sounded like it didn't, but I couldn't make sense of it. And the story didn't make sense. There was a connection between the death of Batman's Bruce Wayne's parents timed with the death of Spawn. It was weird. It was very strange. I couldn't sort of figure that out. It was kind of odd.
Was this still that Joe Chill killed Batman's parents and somehow that tied him with, because that makes no sense to me either.
Make any sense when I read the last team up, but the first two team ups that came out in the 90s, like Frank Miller wrote one. It was drawn by Todd McFarlane. I mean, that was kind of fun. It was Frank Miller, doing Batman, which for the most part I enjoy. And that was published by Image. I can't remember, and DC published one as well. I can't remember who worked on those. But yeah, there was like a Batman Grendel crossover by Matt Wagner, and it was like 2 issues, and that came out in the 90s, and I thought that was great. And of course, before Nexus and meets Madman, that was really cool. But there was a lot of crossovers going on in the 1990s.
Okay. Very cool. Yeah, I know that they because you have in your thing, you've got a Batman and the Max. They actually have that Arkham Dreams where Batman meets man. I've never read it, but it's a Batman Max thing where they meet up.
Well, in the early '90s, there was a lot of like when I was growing up, I was a huge Marvel Comics fan. So anything that John Byrne did or Walt Simonson or Frank Miller did in the '80s, I love that stuff. That was great. In the early '90s, when Image uh, was formed, they were producing a lot of material that I liked at the time.
Yeah.
But the Max comic book series, I love that. I thought that was a great book. And then they recolored it, I don't know, like 10 years ago. And it was called The Max Maximized. And it was published by IDW. And then they recolored that, and it's still great. But yeah, so like right after that, then there was this crossover between the Max and Batman. And yeah, I didn't like that so much.
Okay.
So, but yeah, Max, yeah, I love that character. I love the original series, and that was really fun stuff. It was a little too, you know.
My experience with the Max was from the television show, which I own the DVD, by the way. I broke down. It's like I want to get the whole DVD because I've never seen every episode. It gets really weird. It's one of these shows where like the first 3 or 4 episodes are outrageously perfect. Everything about them, the story, the way it looks. I'm like really big on when they've got like the shadow on somebody. That one girl that's the bad guy's daughter, and they've got a shadow, and you see all this huge like hair going up, and you see like her glasses are reflecting white, and I love stuff like that. And they do all those types of weird things through it, but like the first 3-4 episodes totally cool, and then it just like gets insane. But I mean, a lot of things have, whether they've taken a while or not. I remember when like Savage Dragon used to be like a cartoon on TV and everything, and now apparently it's got like really raunchy.
Yeah, I think I yeah, in the 1990s again when Savage Dragon first came out, I thought it was a great book. It was a mini series and then a regular series, and I was a huge fan back then. Yeah, it's the current Savage Dragon. It's very pornographic.
Yeah.
Very vulgar stuff. Not anything that I would really like. But when MTV Animation was producing the Max animated series, and it was right before I started working for MTV. Yeah, so I have like copies of storyboards from that series, the animated series, and scripts and character designs from the Max animated series. So I got copies of all that stuff. Like,
That is cool.
Yeah, I loved it. It was great.
Was the Head a comic?
The Head, no.
Because you know MTV did the Head, and they
Yeah,
also did Eon Flux as
right.
well around that same time.
Yeah, one of my college buddies, and we like when I went to college, I graduated from the School of Visual Arts in Manhattan, and then afterwards we were all like roommates, and we rented the top couple floors of a brownstone in Jersey City. So we're all like looking for work, and one of the guys, he ended up working as an animator on Beavis and Butthead since pretty much early on at when Beavis and Butthead started. And yeah, it was in the 1990s. Like everybody wanted to do animation. You know, Cartoon Network was doing some really good stuff in the 1990s. MTV, yeah, they had Eon Flux and the Max. The Max was great, like I said. Beavis and Butthead, which was successful, but I was never a fan of Beavis.
I like Daria like way
Daria,
better than
yeah, like
Daria Morgenstern was awesome.
yeah, I knew like all those guys that were working on that stuff, and then I started working at MTV right on like towards the end of Beavis and Butthead on the Dennis Rodman show. So that was a fun place to work. Eon Flux, yeah, we used to like the Eon Flux cartoon, and I have a Xerox artwork from a cell from the animated series, and the guy who created Eon Flux, he signed it, and I got that framed. I also have a little sketch by Sam Keith, who was the creator of the Max, and he was visiting the MTV animation studios at the time when they were producing the Max cartoon series. And my buddy was at the office at the time, and he had Sam Keith sign a comic for me, which was nice. And my buddy was like, "You should do a little sketch of the Max and write to Al, choke and die." And Sam Keith is like, "I can't write that." And then my buddy like asked this other chick he was working with, and was like, "Would Al like that?" And she said he would love it. So I got this little sketch of like a Sam Keith Max drawing, and it says "choke and die to Al from Sam Keith." And that was kind of funny, and I got that frame too. So yeah, this was a time when in animation and comics, when it was fun working for these companies, and you could have a fun time doing stuff.
I was told that back then you could like just call up like Marvel, DC, say, "Hey, I got this idea for something." Now it's like, nah, you can't do that.
No, you can't. It's difficult. But for me, I have no desire to do that ever again anyway. But yeah, in the 90s, you're working in like, especially like if you're living in Manhattan, New York City, and eventually we all lived in Jersey City, which was right on the other side of the Hudson River from Manhattan. So yeah, I was going from like MTV Animation to Marvel Studios to Sesame Street to Nickelodeon to DC Comics. So we were all like looking for work and trying to pay the rent and finding work elsewhere, and also come up with ideas of our own to do comics and animation on our own. And so it was a time like if you were working in animation in the 1990s, you could just call Cartoon Network or Nickelodeon. And Nickelodeon, they were in Manhattan too, and just like pitch an idea. So, but you can't do that nowadays. Everybody, they don't want any unsolicited material. So you got to be careful.
So what I gather is that Diamond has filed Chapter 11 bankruptcy, and what initially has like triggered all of this is because in 2020, and we all know what 2020 was, because of all the stuff going on, and they said they didn't know what to do, and they couldn't have people standing real close to each other and whatever, that breach of contract, DC Comics pulls out. They say, we're going to get somebody else to distribute, which that's like crazy, stupid, damaging. Now they've sold their New York facility, because the only reason they had one in New York was because DC printed like over in Canada, wherever, not far away. And so now they've got theirs in Missouri. And I think I was told Universal is who distributes in Canada, and they're trying to buy up Diamond in Europe. This is like talk that I've heard from people that are like in the comic store, like business stuff. And that they may also possibly turn around and get Diamond here, in the States, but that was, what damaged them horrifically. A lot of businesses in 2020, a lot of things went up, a lot of things went down. If you were like doing social media stuff or whatever, you became huge because people were like in their house and had nothing to do. So that's what I'm being told. So I know that Mike Barron and I know that Steve Rude, that they're both kind of doing their own thing with Nexus right now. I saw that Steve Rude, his thing for some of his stuff, it says that these comics are printed in Canada. Is it cheaper, just from a professional standpoint, to print comics in Canada as opposed to the United States?
It was.
Okay. Like how much?
Well, so the Sword of Eden graphic novel, the first one, was printed in Canada at the very end of 2019. And my printer at the time was Maquis. They are in Quebec, and they gave me the best quote. Even with shipping included, Maquis gave me the best quote to print the Sword of Eden graphic novel. So I was planning on working with Maquis again to print volume 2. But when I was looking for a printer, I had some problems with Maquis. But the best quote I found for volume 2 of the Sword of Eden to be printed was Comics Wellspring. They gave me the best quote. So I went with them, and they're in the States.
Yeah.
Prior to recent years, printing in Canada was cheaper. I know a lot of the larger companies will print in China because it's cheaper to print in China. But
But then
yeah,
you get the shipping, right?
even with shipping, it's just that it'll take like 3 months for you to get your books, after it's printed. But yeah, I know a couple of indie guys that print their books in China. I don't know why everything is so expensive now. Even I went to for the Sword of Eden Shinobi again, Volume 2. I did contact Maquis again, and I also contacted, what's the name of them? They're in Kitchener, Canada. Comics Press, but their quote was so expensive, and they had printed a couple of prints for me prior to that, but their quote was like, I think it was like $12 to print each book, and each book has a cover price of $15. So I was like, well, I can't do that, I won't make any money. So yeah, Comics Wellspring gave me the best quote. So I'll probably look into them again. Also, Mindy and Mike Wheeler, they're printing now. So I contacted Mindy,
Mindy.
yeah, about possibly printing some more stuff. So yeah, I'll talk to them as well when the time comes.
That's news to me. I didn't know that they were doing it. Yeah, and a lot of places too, you get the discount, like depending on how many you get and all that. I mean, of course, if you're getting obscene amounts, then you're paying next to nothing. But then it's like you're spending like what $40,000 or whatever. We're talking like DC Marvel type sales. But
Right.
but yeah,
Well,
I've looked at it, and like the most that I could imagine like reasonably getting would be like 1,000 or something like that for like a big order to say, hey, I'm getting these cheap. In anything above that's just like running into like, I need to sell these and make sure these will sell. I mean, if you knew it was a sure thing, you'd be like, oh, okay.
well, here's a couple things. So one is, I think in the early 2000s, print on demand was kind of popular.
Yeah.
So they would do a small print run, but you would pay more per unit. So each book would cost a little bit more than printing offset. And offset is when you got the big rollers and they're printing
Yeah.
out, large amount of books. But now there's digital printing. So volume 1 of the Sword of Eden, that was offset. So that was printed again by Maquis on the offset, so with the big rollers. Volume 2 was printed digitally, so it was digital printing. So you got to keep that in mind when you're actually coloring or adding grade tones to your work, because if you print offset, your grade tones will get darker. But if you print digitally, your grade tones might not change that much. So you got to figure out who's printing your book, how to format everything, and make sure it's called dot gain. Because when you print a book in black and white with gray tones, even with the gray tones, they're tiny little dots. So if you print offset, what happens is those tiny little dots start to bleed into each other, and your gray tones start getting a little bit darker. So you got to, think about that ahead of time. And you got to think about distribution. Are you going to just have a distributor distribute your book? Are you going to sell your book in bookstores? Because that takes a chunk off your cover price as well. So, and then you got to figure out, how much is it going to cost me to print my book? And you just got to, think about all these things and, crunch the numbers you want to do. But it's hard, man. It's really hard finding a very reliable printer. Because with Volume 2, I went to like 5 or 6 different printers to just get quotes. And some of them were like, they were really expensive. One guy was charging me more than it cost to sell the book, each copy. So, and then I had another printer, and there was like, they printed out a couple of pages, and there was this white line around all the word balloons for some reason. And they couldn't figure out why that was happening. So I was like, well, I can't print, I can't do that. So yeah, so Volume 2, Comics Wellspring was they gave me the best quote. They were fine, But yeah, so if I have to reprint Volume 2, or when I'm printing Volume 3, yeah, I'll talk to Comics Wellspring again. I'll talk to Mindy Wheeler and see if I can get a quote and see if that works out.
Awesome. Well, man, it's good talking to you. I hope that you have an amazing weekend. Again, we were supposed to have Sean, is it Davis is
John,
on here this week. He uh, he does, what is it, Blanket Boy and Pillow Man. He wrote it with like his 3-year-old son, invented them for Starcross Comics,
mhm.
and he has the flu. It's going around, man. All kinds of. My sister is like flat on her back. She sells real estate. My older sister April. Um, that's one of them that people are moving all to Tennessee, and so she does nice with that. Coldwell Banker in Kingston, y'all. But yeah, it is what it is. People are getting sick and everything. It has just been blistering cold down here, by the way. I mean, like real cold. We've had like sub-zero like wind temperatures. I think it's like 11 or whatever. So hopefully it warms up here pretty soon. But yeah, it's been cold. It hasn't been that windy at all. It usually isn't, but it's it's been cold.
Because you had snow a couple of weeks ago.
We did, and that's like a weird thing in East Tennessee that almost doesn't happen. And
Right.
the few freak times that it does happen, it's like a little nothing powder.
Mhm.
But yeah, we've had some really cold temperatures. It's funny because I know some people that want to go berserk about like global warming and then like a blizzard will hit like Tennessee. Um, it's amazing when you look at the people who started conceptualizing that largely, and they were all politicians and there were all political bills that were tied to something that I'm not qualified to say whether it's real or not, but nonetheless, you have about half the community that disagrees with them, and it's even thrown off a little bit more than that because it's so politicized that you get ostracized for stuff if you say something isn't a thing or is or if you go against the flow, because it's not just about a science thing, it's tied to some kind of political like garbage, and that's trash, man.
Well,
People should be able, scientists should be able to say, by my estimation, this is the way that things are because this is what I do. And if somebody sees the other, go ahead and say it. And they should be, we're supposed to be able to say like freely what we want, and sure there's consequences that for some time. But I mean, over that's stupid,
well, they're always lying to you, especially about climate change. So Al Gore did that movie some years ago, and he said that because of global warming and the melting of the ice caps, we were all going to drown by 2012. So they're all lying to you. And
Can
if
you
you
imagine the full on panic that would cause people that buy, and you have that with all kinds of things,
sure,
because when Trump, who's now been elected as president of the United States, yeah, I know, when he's running, right, it's like he's gonna put you in chains and in concentration camps, and
sure,
there's people having full on emotional breakdowns because they believe it, and
right.
then Bill Maher has to get up and do a retraction and say, look, obviously that's not going to happen. Here's the reality of it. So like before he gets elected or whatnot, he's been in office before. There's something fundamentally wrong with not having in some kind of an ideal kind of sort of, yeah, he'll mix it up and do something different, presumably better, you would think, or more effective in whatever way, more organized because he's been in office before. But you should have some idea this is how it's going to be because he's been in office before, so you have something to base it on. um and I hope that he does do better. I think that
Well, he's doing great. The last couple of days,
oh
all his
man, yeah,
Twitters.
I think that a lot of outrage, I know that a lot of outrage because I've heard it from people that take great issue with him, was the mean tweets and all that. And he did do a lot of things that were totally unpresidential. We're not talking about the good stuff. We're saying that stuff that if somebody feels like you hate them, it doesn't matter what you do right because they can't see past that. And so it's better not to do that. But yeah, I get the whole shebang with it because it's a catch 22, that you've got people that are looking to gun you down. But I mean, he did give people some ammunition, sure.
But the thing,
um
the the establishment is always lying to you, and the
I
way
know,
they control people is through fear.
I know.
They say that Trump is a Nazi, that the world's melting, and that there is no God, and abortion.
Joe Biden's sane, incompetent. When I mean a fool. I mean there's if you have no place of voting if you can't see that the man is like bat crap crazy, insane, nuts. And they want to say, well, no, they're editing videos and all that. He's not with it. And it's really abuse to have him running for office when he's in that shape. Somebody should have said no because he lacks the competence to say no. So I mean, what is that? There were people that were going berserk. I talk to all kinds of people, and I love people even if we have different opinions on things or whatever. But I've had people that were very adamantly against Trump, and they're like, "How is it that Trump won?" I said, "Well, let me just tell you what some of it was." I said, "You had Democrats, enormous, overwhelming amounts of lifelong hardcore Democrats saying, 'I cannot back Kamala Harris. She's such a horrendously horrible bad choice being shoved down our throat. They didn't even let us choose our own candidate. And then they said that the guy that's running for the Republican ticket is a threat to democracy when the party saying that is forcibly like totalitarian rule shoving someone down our throat that we do not want. You had Congress people in the Democratic Party saying that. Everybody and their cousins. Sure, there were some people that said, yeah, but I think that it was more about who they didn't want in than her. She was an awful choice. She was a horrible choice. History reflects that anybody that was like pushing her out there, I'm not saying that voted for her, but I mean that was like making this a thing, that it's her and there is no other, that they're an idiot because she lost abysmally. And it's not just because of any of the good things that you can say about Trump. And I don't even think that that's just the things that you can say about him. I think that it's look at the team that he's lined up. He's got a very bipartisan thing. He's got people that are competent. And I think that he
Sure.
did that the last time. I really like that Speaker of the House that he had the last time. I think that he's lines himself up with a lot of really capable people. Um, it would be nice if he would, I don't know, not try and set people off or whatever. I do know on the other extreme end of it that there's a lot of Christians, conservative Christian people that are really worried about lots of antichrist type stuff. Elon Musk bringing in the mark of the beast. All that. I don't know if you even hear, and people don't even think about that or talk about that. Certainly, if somebody had the technology to do it, Elon probably would. One world currency and all that. That's kind of been like slowly coming out anyway. I mean, when I pay for stuff, I pay with a credit card, and so I mean, I could say, man, I'm against this or that's turning the water up to a boil ever more slowly. That it's trying to make things cashless,
Well,
and then it's like let's just make it all the same, and then it's like now you don't have to swipe your card. Now you hold your card and you scan it, and somebody could say how much more convenient if it was in your right hand or in your forehead, a microchip. So I mean, that's slowly been coming on board. And I don't know, until somebody gets like shot in the head and then they come back from it after 3 days, which is what's supposed to happen with the Antichrist. You can't definitively say, or until they sign a 7-year peace treaty between Israel and the warring peoples right in their neighborhood, and break it halfway through. You can't really definitively say because, quite frankly, going down that rabbit hole, quite literally every single president that I can think of, Obama, Clinton's, Bush, the other Bush, all of them, Antichrist, 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 because it's looking for a world leader and somebody in power. We don't even know that it's an American.
well, here's the thing. People need to read the Bible.
Yeah,
And I am a huge eschatology fan.
you
So
do.
we're referring to Revelation chapter 13, the mark and the name of the beast. So the part about having something written on your arm, in the Greek, it means your right arm. It doesn't necessarily mean your right hand. And people who, during the Great Tribulation, if they don't take the mark or the name of the beast, they're going to get their heads chopped off. In Daniel chapter 9, we're told that the Antichrist is going to come from the area of Turkey and Syria. Micah chapter 5 refers to the Antichrist as the Assyrian. You mentioned Revelation chapter 13. So in the Greek, it says the Antichrist is going to have a death wound to the head.
Yes.
So the Antichrist is going to actually get hit or shot or something in the head, and he's going to die.
Yeah.
And come back again.
Mm-hmm.
So also, like if you read Ezekiel chapter 38 and 39, it's all about the war of Gog and Magog, and it lists all the name of the nations that these modern day Muslim nations are going to attack Israel, and it lists all the names of these nations.
What's interesting when you look at a lot of that too, if you really get deep into it, is the way that they were named then isn't the way that they're named now, and you've got to look at like at that time,
Persia,
what was that place?
As it mentions Libya, we know who these people are. And the second coming of Messiah is also mentioned a lot in the Old Testament as well. Zechariah chapter 14, the day of the Lord, where the Messiah returns, he lands on the Mount of Olives, and there's this big earthquake. And what the Lord does is that he stops these armies from attacking Israel, Jerusalem.
Yeah, absolutely.
So eschatology is all through the Old Testament as well. It's not just Revelation, which I love. So Joel, I think, is all prophetic. Isaiah, Psalm 22 talks about the Messiah being crucified in the hands and the feet, and it's just amazing. So you need to read the Bible and see what's going on. I think
people had said about Trump the last time, because again, it turns into cherry picking scripture as how he'll like boast great things and all that. But again, that's cherry picking. That's pulling verses from here or there.
Whole Bible, and you got to take all these things together and look what the Bible says about who the Antichrist is. Also, John's first epistle, where he writes to the church of Ephesus, he talks about the spirit of Antichrist, and the spirit of Antichrist will deny the Father and the Son. Mm-hmm. So who comes from Syria, Turkey? He's referred to as the Assyrian. He denies the Father and the Son. Those people who don't worship and take the mark of the name of the beast will get their heads chopped off.
Yeah.
Goes all the way back to Isaac and Ishmael. All the way back to that. These two people.
John Bevere has written extensively on that, and I love him as a writer. By the way, his wife also is a fantastic writer. But he said people are always looking for different groups that to come along that do that. He said, and why? Because there's always been one group that's noted for decapitating people. That's Islam. That's did that. He has a book that's talks about where Mystery Babylon is.
Sure.
And he goes through intricate detail of everything that it's said that it is, and why it's not these things, and why it's this thing. Spoiler alert, by the way, this is a book of his. I don't have my hat on right now. That's a spoiler alert. But he says, people forget the fact that it says that it's in the desert, and he spells out in explicit detail, bit by bit by bit by bit by bit, why it's 100%, according to him in his book, Saudi Arabia. He talks about the slavery that goes on there, talks about how many American politicians and other politicians around the world that are owned by some kind of Saudi prince, their whole history, all kinds of things. Which means if Saudi Arabia is Mystery Babylon, it's talking about how it's going to fall, that the wrath of God will come against it. And then you'll have like the Clintons and whoever all else, a lot of people, Republicans and Democrats alike that are Saudi Arabian rich, will be mourning because of all the goods and everything that they had and all the money that they've lost because they're not around. So, that's not necessarily saying everybody there, but that's saying a lot of corruption and things there, and a lot of wickedness there, enough to matter,
Well, I think the Bible's very clear. I think as we get closer to these events, for me, things seem a lot more clear. And like all the verses I mentioned points to, Islam and elite. Even the Muslims believe in this character by the name of the Mahdi. They believe that the
Mahdi,
is going to return.
Yeah.
Mahdi is going to make a peace deal with Israel. That's what they believe.
Yeah.
That Mahdi was going to conquer Israel. And
the Muad'Dib is like the bringer of light, man. And, and Frank Hubert's Dune, like takes a whole lot of Muslim theology and like twist it around into science fiction, twist it around. But yeah, so he's like a warlord, man. He's going to kill off all the unbelievers and all the infidels. So essentially what he's described and doing, and it's like glory hallelujah from
Right.
from Islam,
Right.
is the living, breathing embodiment of who the Antichrist,
Correct.
this man full of the devil that's going to drag all of his followers straight to hell to burn forever,
Yep.
is. So, you know, come to Jesus.
Well, that's the thing, because the Muslims believe that this is going to happen. So when this guy shows up, this Mahdi, he's also like the Muslims believe that Jesus is going to return as well. But this Jesus is a Jesus that will say that he was never crucified.
I know, and all the Christians were wrong and all that. That's just like,
But if you read Revelation, you know you talk about there's the Revelation chapter 13 again, where it talks about the two beasts. So you have the beast, the Antichrist, and you also have the false prophet.
yeah.
So I think that's who those two people are going to be. It's not that Islam is right or anything like that. Satan, who is the devil, created this evil religion. But I think when these people show up, the Antichrist, the Mahdi, people are going to believe it, right? You know, and it's going to unite the Muslim world, you know, because the Shiites and the Sunni are always fighting anyway because they believe that the Mahdi is going to be a different person. So, yeah, that's what's going to happen. And everybody's going to believe it because the world does not like the Jesus of the Bible. They want to think that Jesus was some nice guy who's not going to judge you. He's not the Son of God. He is not God in the flesh. But that is who he really is.
Well, he's holy.
He is. He's holy, holier, and holiest. Isaiah, right?
Yeah.
So that is our Savior. And the world is in need of a Savior.
Amen.
So. Anyway, I can talk about this forever.
Oh, absolutely, man. God bless. That was awesome. God bless you. We'll do it again. Everybody, Indie Comics Underground, appreciate it, and we'll talk later.
All right, thanks, Ben.
Cool. Thank you.